My name is Naeem Biviji of Studio Propolis. It's furniture making, and well, we're architect makers and we make furniture and bits of buildings and everything in between, and I run Studio Propolis with my wife.
And how did you become an architect designer, if that's the way to put it?
We studied architecture, and we moved out to Kenya about 10 years ago, and we found there was a situation where to get anything made we had to get really involved with the process of making, and to bridge this gap between what we designed and what we could get built. So we set up a workshop to do that.
And what's the issue there? Because it's sort of about the ability to get something made that's fairly rough cut. It isn't within sort of 0.2 millimeters, is it?
Well, it's not only about precision, but it's initially it was about actually just, you know, when you see ideas badly made, it erodes a confidence in what you think can be made. But as you start to work with new materials and explore new materials, it fundamentally affects how you think about design and how you design, and they go hand in hand. And increasingly our studio is an essentially is in our workshop, and we use our workshop as a space to design, which is really fun.
And describe to me your current project.
We've got a few on the go. We're working on a cathedral where we've been involved with a lot of the furniture and some of the more specific architectural components like the doors. And we've worked in it for a few years, prototyping bits that we've taken away and made ourselves, or made with others.
And this is a Catholic cathedral. Describe the space to me.
The space is very contemporary, but it's got a pared back, I guess, humility about it, which is, I guess, quite un-Catholic in many ways. It's got an unusual kind of, it's quite very minimal and pared back. It uses...
it's a big space.
It's a big space. It's about 1,000 people, and it uses wood which was grown in the area, in Kericho.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And you designed a set of stacking chairs for the project.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the process of doing that.
So the stacking chair was born out of a response to both the architecture of the building and other pieces which we had designed, like the pews.
Yeah.
But this was an opportunity to take the chair, which is basically a standalone object, and unlike the pews, which are long benches, treat it as a much more sculptural form. So it's got this kind of curved back to it, which was complicated to resolve, and was one of the big challenges. One was, one challenge was to take this wood, cypress, which is a very simple, humble wood, local wood, and transform it into something beautiful. The other challenge was how to make this curved back in a situation where you can't get veneer, and to develop a technique that we could make it in the workshop, bending it. And so for us, like these wedges, it was all wedged in the end, but these wedge shapes, and the form becomes, I guess, an articulation of a very specific resolution to a problem of lack of good materials and veneer and industrial process of making it. So it was kind of, it's a contemporary object made on our own terms, I guess, and it uses, I guess, other aspects are like, the seat, is borrowed from, other chairs that we've made, and it allows it to shrink and swell. And it's made without any mechanical fixings. So, yeah.
And you're also responsible for the doors of the cathedral. Describe those to me.
Those were an interesting project because they become a collaboration of lots of people, and it's about fit and getting a negotiation of tolerances between the work that we've made, work that other people make, other people supply, things like the hinges and they have to fit in the contractor's work. Lots of people involved in that way, and it's about controlling that to get something to fit.
And it's a
well.
glass freeze, isn't it?
It's so there's been an artist working in our workshop for a few years and designing up sculpting relief panels in bronze, and they've been cast at a foundry here, and then we've been involved with the steel work and actually putting it all together and fitting it on site.
All that?
It was all prototyped 1-to-1,
Yeah.
because there's a lot going on there which you can't just draw and make, and there's no rule book to kind of refer to a totally kind of unusual object.
Yeah.
I mean, things like the cladding is made of it's all raw steel, and it's how thick should that steel be? Will you see the weld coming through? Will you not? Can you lift it? Is it too heavy?
Yeah.
How do you design this thing that can come apart, that we can put it back together on site? How can we transport it? How can we so there are all these different constraints that you can only work out through experiment.
And you also make individual furniture pieces for people?
We do. There's some one-off pieces and an ongoing kind of collection of pieces that we make for people as well.
Who's buys
There's a big range of people. I guess from individuals to I guess people who want to furnish their office spaces differently, and these pieces are interchangeable.
Yeah. And which other designers do you think are interesting in Kenya?
There are a few out there. I think that come to mind is someone called Rampel Designs, Mark van Rampelberg. We have great respect for him through the way he's taught us a lot about how he works with his clients, I guess, and is really involved. And he's not just a person who sells you furniture, but you build a relationship with people, and I think that's a really beautiful reason to make stuff, is to engage in that relationship. Otherwise you can just go and buy it somewhere else. The other person is Jan Allen, who runs a company called By Design, and for us his work is really interesting because again he uses his workshop as a real key part of his design process, and he makes big tensile structures and tents, but his designing would not be possible without his very intimate understanding of how to stitch and how to make and how to and how his material fails in the weather, with the wind and the rain, and how to actually put together fairly large pieces skillfully and locally, and I think that's beautiful.
And lastly, how do you think that the relationship with local materials will mark out what designer makers do in Africa?
Well, I think we are so bombarded with we're always bombarded with this image of architecture online constantly, and increasingly like everything looks the same. It could be made anywhere, and we have this opportunity to take simple local materials, and it takes a lot more care, but we have this opportunity to make something that's indigenous, local, but contemporary,
and comes from somewhere,
and comes from here, and yet speaks of contemporary design as we might have been trained elsewhere, or these references that we draw from other places. But we have this opportunity to make something that's contemporary, local materials, but made in a way that's uses local manufacturing, local people, engages with people locally, and we find a lot of the stuff we make tends to be sourced about 5 or 6 kilometers from our workshop, and we're really involved with the person who makes the bolts, the person who makes the steel, the person who, and it's really it's a beautiful process to be involved with each step of the way. It's frustrating as well, but it's enriching as well.